7-6 seconds.
Right there, boom. I told you it was probably something else that had happened.
It's your boy Elder, man. We just checking out this spaces thing, and we're gonna get this thing going. Just wanted to do a little listening and then talk to, man. So this idea about whether Cade is a number one option or Cade a number two option or Cade number three option is just kind of crazy to me when we think about this conversation about what is Cade, like what is Cade, what is Cade. Is Cade a one? Is Cade a two? Is Cade a three? And we start to define these things, and we just start to define these players at so early in their maturation, so early in their careers. We asking these questions: is what is Cade? What is Cade? What is Cade? Is Cade a one? Is Cade a two? Is Cade a three? So I did a little breakdown, and it just kind of got me kind of bugging to even think about that. Fans would be so quick to call that man Robin, call Cade Robin. After 100 games, these Cade numbers, after 100 games, Cade numbers are like on par with his numbers are something like where LeBron, Luka, Steve Francis, Oscar Robertson, Magic Johnson, only 6 other players have put up the same type of numbers that Cade has in the first 100 games. But yet, we're going to come back and call that man Robin. Like, Cade has played just about 100 games, literally 100 games. 100 games in real time is an 82-game season, and then 18 games the next season. So we know that he only played 12 games last year. I just think it's kind of crazy to say that he's not a number one option. So here's the reality. And y'all can agree, y'all can disagree, but here's the reality of it. Cade is starting, and he's the number one option outside of Detroit on about 7 other teams. You can't tell me Cade isn't the number one option in Houston. You can't tell me that Cade wouldn't be the number one option in Utah. You can't tell me Cade wouldn't be the number one option in Washington. You can't tell me that Cade wouldn't even be the number one option. And I know Cam Thomas is balling. You can't tell me that Cade would not be the number one option for the Brooklyn Nets. You can't tell me Cade wouldn't be the number one option for the Chicago Bulls. Like, there are teams that you can legitimately argue that Cade will be the number one option on 7, 8 other teams. Then you can come back later, right? And you can look at maybe there are about 5 or 6 teams that already had a solidified guy. Like, they have a number one guy. Like, they know that he is, like Tyrese Halliburton. You know he's the number one guy. He's putting up ridiculous numbers, like 28 and 7. You know what I mean? He's like 28 points a game, 27 points a game, and about 12 assists. He's the number one guy. You can't tell me that Cade wouldn't be a strong number 2 behind Tyrese Halliburton, or a strong number 2 behind Donovan Mitchell. And that's only because these guys are already in their all-star, superstar ascend. Like, they're already there. And then the rest of the teams, they already got 2 superstars. The rest of the teams are they in go mode. The rest of them teams are in AMG mode. You know what I mean? We talking about the Bucks. They have a superstar and a superstar. You know what I mean? You have a team like the Suns. You know, they have superstars and superstars. Like, if a team already has 2 superstars or 2 guys they call them like a perennial all-star and a superstar, yeah, Cade is going to come in and be a number 3. So, but let's just take this place into a world where, I appreciate you guys just listening to me do my little rant, but let's take this to a place in time in a world where if Cade is a number 2, let's just say that the Pistons drafted Cade as a number 2 or 3. You know what I mean? That means that in that draft, there are no number ones. I mean, the draft that Cade came in with Green, with Jalen Green, when he came out with Mobley, Scotty Barnes, Kuminga, Wagner. That means in that draft, there were no number ones. There were no number ones in that draft. So the Pistons drafted, in my opinion, the best player in the draft. I know Scotty Barnes putting up numbers, but he's putting up numbers in a very good situation. I know Mobley's putting up numbers in a very good situation. I know Cam Thomas is putting up numbers in a very good situation. I know Wagner is putting up numbers in a very good situation. But then we have Cade putting up numbers in a horrible situation. So let's just say in that draft, we drafted the best player in the draft and the best player is number 2. So now, if you're telling me, if you believe that Cade is Robin, he will never be Batman. He will never evolve, as I call him. He'll never become Nightwing. You don't think Cade is ever going to be that. He's always going to be the little corny guy running around in a little green and yellow suit with a green, yellow, and whatever green, yellow, red suit with a little mask on, always on Batman. Batman always got to save him. So when you call a guy Robin, it means that Batman always got to save him. You need somebody always to save him. So you're not say that Cade is not the person, and you don't think he's that person. You don't think he's that person to be able to become the evolution of all of this. You gotta think about that, man. You gotta think about that. Like, what are we investing in? And are we really willing to invest in Cade if you don't think he's that guy? You know what I mean? If you don't think that Cade is that guy, you can't invest no more around him. You can't. I say trade him. That's how bold I am. I say trade him because you're gonna waste your time. If you don't think Cade is the number 1, you got to trade him, man. I tried to invite you up, Dave. I don't know what's happening. It ain't lit me, but send a request.
Yeah.
Are you in?
Yeah, I'm in. I think I love what you're saying. I think we're thinking about this the wrong way, though.
All right.
I think a lot of times we just, as fans, it's very easy for us to do who's a 1, who's a 2, who's a 3. But I think what we miss a little bit is like, who's the player, what is their game, and then what does that game need around them in order to succeed.
Right.
And I think that inherently, when you look at a guy like Cade Cunningham, he is objectively a championship level facilitator point guard. He'll be able to score his 20 plus a game. But if you don't put things around him that are going to allow him to facilitate, then he's never going to be the dude who just comes out and scores 65 straight nights. And so if you don't have anyone else who can score, you're minimizing his best talents and thus making him look like we'll call it a 2 or a 3, when in actuality, if you get people on this team that can use his facilitation to score, suddenly he becomes a Chris Paul type, where it is he's a scoring point guard. He'll be able to do whatever he wants to do on the court, but it's because he's not having 3 bodies thrown at him all the time, because he's got Killian Hayes standing in the corner and no one trusts that he's going to be able to make a shot.
No, that's legit, yeah. Man. And that's my thing. That's what they'll say, oh, you're a Cade fan. No, man, I'm a basketball fan. I'm a Pistons. I don't even live in Detroit, and I've been a Pistons fan like through the highs and the lows. So to even be a Pistons fan now through this, when I could just take the back door out, and I'm telling you, like, I look at everything. So when I see a guy, like, we do the metrics and the numbers, but let's just be principle based things. I have not seen a guy. Let's just call this case second year. We know it's his 3rd year through this stuff, but let's just call it second year. Yeah. Look at the guys who've done the leap from year 1 to year 2 to go from let's just say pretty much 17 points a game to 22-7. Like, it's a leap. It's like a leap. So now you go compare his leap to the guys who took this leap before. It's like it's the trajectory of already saying that he's a number 1, but the idea that my whole thing is, my conversation is, if you are a person who thinks he is a number 2, if you think he's a number 2, it's like the Pistons are now, reality is you might as well just trade him now. Like, just start all over fresh, because the truth is, that means when you go out and trade, when we typically trade, you go trade, like, nobody's going to give you that number 1. Like, it's not a team in this league that's going to give us their best player, unless we talk about the Wizards. They'll give us, Poole, or they'll give us what's the other of the guy on the Wizards? Kuzma. Yeah, those are their number 1s and 2. Yeah, they'll get moved. But De'Aaron Fox nobody gonna trade De'Aaron Fox to us. You know what I mean? Nobody gonna trade like Devin Booker's. They're not gonna trade Scotty Barnes. They're not gonna trade these guys who are like, they're already saying we going with this person. So they're not gonna, and then not send them to us without us giving up Cade. So we trade Cade, who we think is a number 2, or not me, but some people call it a number 2 and number 3.
Right.
all we're going to get back is somebody else's number two.
That's what I'm thinking. Like to me, it would make a lot more sense. I like Ivy a lot, and this is not an indictment on Ivy, but between Ivy and Cade, I'd keep Cade, and I don't think the two of them's game goes well together. So
No,
I would probably package Ivy, who still is young and has a lot of trade value, in something to get like an OG Anunoby, a player who is
yeah,
not necessarily going to be trading for a number one, but you're trading for a 3-and-D guy who suddenly, when Cade brings the ball up court, you throw two bodies at him, he swings it to OG. You now have a guy who can make a wide open shot. I
right.
love what Asar Thompson has brought this team this year. I also think it's plainly obvious he like airballs more threes than he makes them.
Yeah, most
And I
definitely.
think I think he has so much value otherwise that even if he doesn't develop a shot, he's got a place in this rotation because of what he does defensively and what he does. He's a great facilitator. But it doesn't stop the fact that when the ball's in Cade's hand in a half court offense and you throw two bodies at him, and then Cade swings it to Killian, who a comes at him, so he swings it in the corner to Asar Thompson, you
Fact.
suddenly have a guy who has a wide open three. There's many teams in the league that have many players that will knock down that shot and suddenly make Cade look good in a play like that. And instead it ends with an airball three. So then you look and say, well, Cade had 6 assists tonight. In actuality, he could have had 13. And it's like the one thing I will say for Cade is that's been slightly disappointing for me, and I just think it's his game is he's not the guy who's going to just take over a game night in and night out and score 50 points. But I would
Yeah,
argue that
that's
like
true.
if you have if you and again not to say he's Chris Paul because Chris Paul every time he was on a team they made the playoffs, but it's like Chris Paul was the guy who you knew could get you 20 points, 24 points a game in the mid range. He would get to his spot and he would knock down those long twos. And any time that the defense broke down, he knew exactly where he could get the
Fact.
ball to get a bucket. And Cade doesn't have anyone on this team that's going to get him that bucket.
Yeah,
If you get Cade these players, whether he becomes Anthony Edwards or Tyrese Halliburton or any of these players that we want him to be, I still think that is up in the air and probably a lot on Cade's development. But I think it is no doubt that you would see, instead of thinking that Cade's putting up stats on a bad team, like a Jordan Poole who's just a chucker, who's going to get 30 points on a
fact.
team that lose by
Fact.
100, Cade's stats on a bad team, a lot of those stats are going to be assists, which will make our team less bad if we have players who can put the ball in the hoop.
Yeah, I say that everything you said I'm in agreement with. So I always say that like I was not a fan of the Ivy pick, not because of Ivy, but literally because of Ivy's style of play.
Me too.
That's why I
I
wasn't a
wanted
fan.
Shaden Sharp.
And I was huge on Shaden Sharp. I was okay, but I was even, and he's developed faster than I even thought he would develop.
Me
But
too.
this skill set is what we needed. We needed a guy who can shoot off the wing, who could, and Shaden Sharp, he's actually being Chauncey Billups said, like, we pushing the ball in his hands. We're
Yeah.
asking him, like, but on his original thing, he's a legit 3D guy who can get his own. He's not a guy who needs to bring the ball up court. He's not a guy who needs the ball in his hands. He's not a guy who, when I say need the ball, like he got to take a lot of dribbles. He's not like, okay, we got to do jailbreak offense. As soon as we get the rebound, we got to kick it out to a person. So that's the only way to get going by pushing, being the fastest guy on the court.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. That's cool. It's not a shot at Ivy in his style of play. That is a space for him in the league. When I think about him, he's like and it's not an insult, but he's like a 2023 Ish Smith. Like he's the bigger, stronger, faster, a little bit more
Yeah.
skilled version of Ish Smith. And it's not an insult. People hear that and they think it's an insult. I'm just saying he's the bigger, stronger, faster version of Ish Smith. It's like the new Honda or whatever, like the 2023 version. Just got a
Yeah.
little bit more bells and whistles to it. But there's a certain style of play, but he don't have the vision, he don't have the passing, he don't have the creation of an Ish Smith, but he have the desire to get that ball to the basket, to the rim. So you look at a guy like Cade who already needs the ball in his hands. And I don't believe in all that off ball stuff. I think that's just such a overblown, over the top concept of what we're saying is because usage is going to be the same. I look across the league. It's certain. Luka don't hold the ball in his hand all game long. Luka is not on ball every play up the court. He comes up, he'll pass it, he'll come off a screen, they'll give it back to him, they'll
Right.
spike him up. Is this concept of on ball, off ball is just ridiculous to me. It's just a concept. But when you put Cade in a situation like what he's in now, You started, and I do know injuries, so we do know injuries is a factor. When you start this year off, you gave him. You started Asar Thomas, who I love. I think his upside is there. He ever get a jump shot, he ever get it down, he goes to another level. But he can't shoot. You started with Doran, can't shoot. You start him with Isaiah Stewart, who can shoot, but he's not a threat. No one is scared of
No,
Isaiah Stewart 3 threes a game or 4 threes a game when you're going to make 1.5 out of 4. Like, he's not shooting 10 of them where a team is like, whoa, he's going to take 10, 12 threes and you're going to make 4 or 5 of those. That's going to shift the game. They're like, okay, he's going to, and then you take a guy out of the rebounding space. So now you lose an offensive rebounder. And
exactly.
then you throw in, now you have an opportunity here, and I know that Burks was hurt. I know certain things, but you have an opportunity to say, who we gonna put along Cade? Oh, yes, put in Killian, who can't shoot. So this is, but then Cade still has ability to get you 7 assists, but that is what's around him. It makes it
Exactly.
scary how good he could be if you gave him 1 or 2 more shooters in the starting lineup that was a threat. And then once again, I would say I don't think Cade is a 30 point per night scorer. I think he's like Tyrese Halliburton. Tyrese has gone a little bit above my expectations here. I think he's about 25. I think he's about 25 points per game, man. So I just think when I think about third option, like what third options are doing that?
No.
When I think about second option, the second options who made those leaps in their second year, it was Jason Tatum. It was Devin Booker's. It was
But even
those type
even
of guys. You know what
even
I mean?
Devin Booker was putting up, like, Devin Booker was considered good stats, bad team, and then he got a good team around him, and everyone went, "Oh shit, this guy's he's a superstar."
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he went for 70 and his team lost. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? That's what I'm saying. It's like the idea of what is a one, what is twos, or three. So my concept is, and I was sharing this with some guy, and I told we want to try to get this thing going. Is if you think that Cade is a one, then you build around him. If you think he's a 2 or 3, I'm testing the market. Like I'm saying, what can I get for him? Because that means we got to start over. It's no reason to. I'm not trying to do the 2 thing. We've already done the 2 thing. I love Drummond. I love what Drummond was when he was peaking. Like he was kind of common. Drummond was a 2-3 who became an all-star, and we paid him like he was a number one, and we started to treat him like a number one. But we always knew he needed scores. He needed somebody to get him the ball. He needed somebody to put him in position. And then we did it with Jeremy Grant. Like Jeremy Grant, we knew Jeremy Grant wasn't the one. We know he's a strong 2 or 3, and we moving these guys. So you can't keeping 2s and 3s. If you think that, I don't think that. But if you think that he's a 2 or 3, your next thing got to be like, what can we get for him now? Versus we're gonna give him a big contract, and we always thought he was a 2 or 3. And then you trying to go out and make trades and go into the draft. And in the next 2 drafts, I mean, we don't know about next year, but there's nobody bringing the belts in this draft.
no,
There's no, there's no Wembyama in this. It's a lot of clones. There are a lot of Czech clones, Wembyama clones. Like I think there's one kid. He's like 7'3", linky, small forward. Like it's like they're clones that because we see a success thing. Like you see a model of a guy and then you go, we can. That looks like Wembyama, or that looks like Chet, or that looks like, and you'll take a chance on it, and then that's going to be the bust. Like those
yeah,
are the ones that are going to be the bust. The guys like, they look like, because this is the model of the NBA. It's like the people who look like Dirk Nowitzki, or they look like Dirk Nowitzki, then they end up being bust, or they look like Kobe, they end up being bust. But there are no guys who just ring the bell. Now I'm not saying whether they be good or not as pros. It's too early. I would never do that. But there's no guys who just go, this season just worth tanking for. So
agree.
you're not
And
seeing no number ones in this draft.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
and it's also, I think there's an element of, like, as Pistons fans, no matter what, we're disappointed with how everything looks. I think that's an understatement, but we want to win games. And
Facts.
I think the reality of it is I'm very much like, as far as what Troy did the last couple of years, I'm very much in line with how he thought about it. We had
Yeah.
no assets. We had to get rid of all the assets. We had to suck so that we got high picks and
Yeah.
started to
Yeah.
build stuff. But right now, if we are saying, "Hey, everyone wants Troy fired because his record over 4 years is blah blah blah," and then suddenly we think that our answer to this is bringing another 18-year-old in, yes, and having a high draft pick will always give you a chance to get a player at the top of the draft.
Right.
But if our goal is winning games, it's using trades and free agencies to put stuff around what we currently have. We know we're going to have a high draft pick this year no matter what
No
because of
matter
how
what.
bad this season's gone. But the idea of like, oh, maybe there's an 18-year-old in this draft that's going to make it so that we win 40 games next year. We know that's not how that works.
Yeah. And then that's what it goes back to. If you think the Cade is a number one, that means you draft the best player available.
Yes.
I'm sorry. If you do not think Cade is a number one, if you do not think Cade is a number one, you draft the best player available because that could be another guard. That could be another person who needs the ball. But if you believe Cade is your number one, you got to dress the best player that fits the need of that team. So if you're saying, hey, Cade doesn't have the shooting like we desire, you literally got to put the shooting there. You can't keep on saying, well, let's, get the best player available. And then the best player available, they all do the same thing. That means that's the issue. So I'm not saying I was against Killian. Killian wasn't the guy who I wanted that draft.
No, I
Think
wanted
about this
Halliburton.
conversation about what is Cade.
In
our group, that was Reggie. Reggie was our Halliburton in our group.
For
me, that wasn't my guy. That wasn't my guy for that draft. Like, I'm not gonna be I said Tyrese Halliburton, but I know people did say Tyrese Halliburton, but it wasn't mine. So early.
But
when I think about that draft, I was more if anybody, I was leaning toward like a maxi for a reach. Mine was a maxi for a reach, and everybody could go, "Oh, you talk about in hindsight." I do have posters saying maxi 3. So I did a little. Yeah, I'm saying mine was the maxi for the reach, and I said it was a reach. I literally said it would be a reach, but mine would be maxi.
Be so quick to call that man Robbie.
When you think about it, we took Killian. We come back behind Killian. We go Cade. We come back behind Cade. And Cade was the right pick for me. Then we come back and we do Jaden Ivey. We literally did three guys. We literally did three guys. We do the same. Different outcomes. But they all need the same denominator of how they start the offense. They need the ball. They need the top of the screen. They need screens. They need we got the same type, but they just very different type of players. Like Killian may come off the screen. He just starting to get his offense together with the floater, the little thing. But he was more of I'm gonna drop it off. I'm gonna make the right kick out to the wing. Cade is like, okay, I'm a 3-level scorer. I mean, his shooting is coming on. It still ain't perfect. It still ain't there yet. We love to get that 3-point shooting right around 36%, but he's right around 34 now. I know he had a couple of rough games, but he was right around that 34, 35% no more than 2 games ago. And he's like, I'm the 3-level scorer. I can take the 3. I can hit the mid. I can get to the rim and I can finish the rim. Then you got Ivy, who's like, either I'm going to take the 3 or I'm going to get to the basket. But they all start the same way. And so, but just imagine, and I don't even want to harp on that, but even if we had drafted beyond Killian because he was already there, but if we had drafted like this year with Ivy, we said, man, Ivy, we're going to get a guy who can shoot the ball better. That would have been a better compliment to who Cade is. Yeah. And then now Cade coming back, it's easier to put Ivy in that starting lineup with a complimentary shooter. The reason, and I know the Ivy defense, but the reason also, and I'm not Monty Williams like, oh, Monty Williams making all the right decision. Literally, the reason is he stands there. Ivy doesn't even move. Like he's not cutting, he's not moving. He stands on the wing. Period.
Which is weird because at Purdue, like cutting was part of that was a plus on his draft evaluation. Was that he was like. I know he needed the ball, but they said that
we're seeing EVs.
Athleticism, he was good at making baseline cuts.
I'm glad we all here. I'm glad
I can't
everybody's
figure out the
happy.
Monty Williams thing.
So,
to be honest, I was super excited when the hire happened.
Yeah.
The press conferences have been like embarrassing, just to the point where it's his job to at least try to galvanize the team. Right. And it seems like every press conference he goes to, he's just like, yeah, I don't even know what to do. And it's like, well, if you don't know what to do, who does know? Like your job is kind of to know what to do.
I question the whole coaching staff at this point because I feel like because at some point where Monty Williams would drop the ball somewhere, like I think I go, where's Jared Jack? Like Jared Jack to me was supposed to be, and I don't know. I always took Jared Jack as going to be the fiery assistant coach who's going to get in the guy's faces, who's going to hype him up, who's going to get him going, who's going to tell Cade take those 25 shots a game, who's going to tell Ivy be a dog, who's going to, I just took like Jared Jack was going to be that. So then it's like, man, the coaching staff isn't like the team not well constructed. It doesn't feel like the coaching staff is well constructed. We know the front office is all over the place. It's like this whole thing. And so it all comes down to like, but as fans, it all comes down to what's on the floor. then when we look on the floor and we go, we've lost 22 straight, and we're looking out there and we say, what's good? Like, what is salvageable beyond potential? So when we say Asor, we're saying potential. We say Ivy, potential. We're saying Doran, potential. But right now, when you look at that floor, what is good on the floor? And you say Cade is the only thing that's good that's on that floor. Like, Cade is the only player. Maybe I'm saying, no, I'm going to go back. Cade is the only player who is starting on all 31 teams right now. I don't think there's not a other single player, no matter what role, whether it's a number 1, number 2, or number 3, Cade is the only player that is starting on every other team in the NBA. I think Bogey is coming off the bench for some teams because of his defense, because of his age, because of like how he will be better used. But Cade is the only one who you say, okay, you put Cade on the Warriors going to find a way to start Cade. Steve Kerr absolutely loves Cade game. You put Cade on the Pacers, you know what? Carl Al's going to say, we're going to have to find a way to start Cade. If you put Cade on the Lakers, LeBron is jubilating to say, yeah, he's starting over D'Angelo Russell. Like, he's number 3 in a sense because of who, once again, LeBron and AD, but he's literally like, he's the number 2, but he's like a 2A, like to AD. Like, there's not a team that Cade isn't starting on in the NBA. So then you got to say, okay, but then you would say on the Pistons, he's the concept, he might not be a number 1. I just said, if you think that, anybody who thinks that, if that is a tangible thought in your head, that means this team has now been set back even further. We're like, you don't build around number 2s. You just don't. It's a failed thing. Like, so, but if you believe he's a number 1, you build around it. And I don't hear it. And this is to my buddy Carl, if he hears it. I don't believe in that build with. You don't build with, you build around. Like, so you don't have enough to build around. That means you just start to collect a whole bunch of pieces. When you're building with, you keep collecting all the best pieces. And then you just hope one day that it gels. You hope one day that somebody emerges as a number 1. You hope one day that there's a fallout and you land Giannis on the back of his career, like we got Blake Griffin. Kind of like if Blake Griffin had stayed healthy, like Blake Griffin issue was not his talent. Blake Griffin issue was not his ability. Blake Griffin came to the Pistons, had literally one of the best seasons of his life. He had one of the best seasons of his life. If he could have stayed healthy, we would have probably have traded Blake Griffin around this time and got like a boatload for him to send him to a team. You need to be that kind of lucky to get a guy like a Blake Griffin, but then hope and pray that he's healthy to become your number 1, so that now you can say, oh, Blake Griffin with a Cade. He can give Cade those years. Like, Cade didn't even get nobody to give him those years. He had to come in right away into a situation and had to take off. I just think that it's a hard, like you said, it's hard to distinguish whether a person's a 1, 2, or 3 as far as option. Number 1 option, number 2 option, a number 3 option. But it's even harder to make that determination when you don't have the right pieces to even to make that determination. It's going to turn into a vicious cycle. That's what it's going to turn into. It's going to turn into a vicious cycle of, let's go out and find something. Like they're talking about rumored that Tobias Harris or OG is available. So you make a play for those. Those are 2s and 3 options on their teams. They're number 2 or number 3. Likely, really number 3. Tobias Harris is 3. OG, if you think about, with Siakam and Barnes, he's number 3. So you bring them here. So are you asking the number 3 now to become a number 2? Or are you asking the number 3 to come on number 1? It's a cycle. And then you're going to have to overpay them. And then it's going to start you to winning. Then you start winning, but then you become a mid team. You become that team that's always number 11, 12 in the draft, 13, 14 in the draft, play-in game. Then you don't ever get better because you don't spend your money up on these mids. So that's what I try to say. It's like a cycle. So you do have to determine, if you don't believe in Cade, I believe you got to get as much from him now. If you do believe in him, but Pistons management, whatever, fans is fans, but you do believe in him, you don't think he's little boy Robin, but you think he can evolve into Nightwing, you think he can eventually take over and be the Batman role, you got to build, you got to put the right pick, got to give him his utility. If I talk about my comic book stuff, give that man his utility belt. I mean, that man ain't got no utility belt right now. He ain't got nothing to use. You know what I mean? Yeah, you know what I mean? He ain't got it. He's not LeBron. He not Superman. He didn't come with all the supernatural abilities, 6'9", 250, leaping and jumping, super duper athlete where you can kind of get away with not certain things. He didn't come with all that. He didn't come in like Giannis, who started off all skinny, then took the super serum like Captain America, and all of a sudden bust out, go, turn into a juggernaut. You know what I mean? He's a guy who worked on his craft and skills, but you got to give that man his utility belt, man, and let him do what he do. So
Exactly.
yeah,
It's
man.
I
So
gotta. Unfortunately, I gotta jump. But this has been a
yeah,
hell
I'm
of a
just ready to say
conversation.
that, bro. I was just ready to jump. I said we were just testing it, doing a little test run. But if I ever jump in, man, are you in a group? Are you in a DPC group?
No, but I'll make sure I'm in it.
Yeah, I'll shoot you a link, man. Jump in there.
Awesome.